Hello everyone and welcome to EUN130. So we are at week 10 and this is workshop 1. So in this workshop we will be focusing on you as a reflective practitioner. So reflections on your placement and moving into professional practice. So looking at our workshop overview, this workshop is going to involve a great deal of personal reflection. So about the kind of teacher that you want to be, and this will involve reflection about the self and the professional, and also about how you personally view learning. So learning as a reflective practitioner, and also individually and collaboratively as well. So I want you to pause throughout the workshop to reflect on the specific activities or to watch a clip. Okay, so I will give you some instructions as we go. All right, so I guess in many ways, this unit, it is the start of your professional journey as a teacher. So as we looked at in week 1, self-reflection, it's actually the key. It's a key part of this journey, and hence our encouragement of you to use your learning journal. So you really do need to critically reflect on your growth as an emerging professional, and especially in these 3 domains of professional practice. So your professional knowledge, professional practice in itself, and of course the all-important professional engagement as well. So who are you and what makes you who you are? These are some pretty big questions. So we're all different, and what makes us who we are, it's very different to each individual. So why do we act and react in the way that we do? I guess we all bring a very different set of values, of attitudes, and also beliefs to everything that we think, everything we say, and everything we do. So this influences every single component of our practice as a teacher. And you really do need to reflect on this question so you can know who we are and what makes you who you are, what our values, our attitudes and beliefs are, and also where these come from as well. So it's your responsibility as a teacher to understand this, and it's also a part of how you're going to be in terms of your ongoing learning as well. It's all connected. It's all connected to the big picture. So you've completed your very first placement, and now you probably have a pretty solid idea of what your role and your responsibility as a teacher involves. And you would also have a good idea of what areas you might need to work on. So this would have become clear to you in your interim, and then in your final report, and in your discussions, and in the feedback given to you by your supervising teacher. So you may like to set some goals to work toward prior to your next placement, and also moving into your next placement as well. Some specific goals that you would like to work on. You might also want to think about how you're going to achieve these goals. So what you need to do, what learnings, what discussions, areas that you're going to need to focus on in specific units, for example. And you also need to think about how you'll know when you've actually achieved these goals before. And we have talked about this before. So the kind of evidence that you're going to have to collect to show that you actually have met these goals or are in the process of meeting them. Another one of these goals that you may consider when you're thinking about these 4 points on the slide is harnessing your beliefs in preparation for your professional learning statement. So writing this statement, which is connected directly to your QTPA and your final placement. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about this in workshop 2. So definitely in response to these questions, when you're thinking about them, I definitely have your interim report and your final report there to reflect on very specific areas. Okay, so as I said before, teaching is a matter of values. So I guess teachers teach, or people teach because of something specific that they believe in. So that's why we actually consider teaching. It's about the person within the profession. So our identity as a person and as a teacher. So they're both very, very closely connected. So what do you believe in? What things matter to you? So for me, I guess, as an educator and as an early childhood educator too, because that's a really big part of my professional philosophy, building strong relationships, I guess, is one of my core beliefs. Building relationships to advocate for individual students, to understand their needs, their strengths, and their specific understandings. So understandings about learning as well. To look very closely at their context, at the context of their lives and their circumstances. And I guess also to the many influences that impact their learning at any given time, and not just their learning, but their well-being as well. So this is, I guess, the person within the professional that's me. So this is what is, I guess, the core to my beliefs as a teacher. So this is the opportunity, I guess, in this particular workshop. This is what you're going to be really reflecting on in preparation for completing or working towards the development of your teaching philosophy or your teaching statement. So teacher identities, they're both stable, but they're also fragmented at different times and also in different ways as well. So this is influenced by life, by career, and also by situational factors at any point in time. So Ketchterman's, he sees professional identity as 5 interrelated parts. So these parts are influenced by experiences from the past, by intentions, and I guess expectations about your future. And this is going to determine your practice and also your identity as a teacher. So it's all about how we see ourselves, what motivates us, how we perceive, or how we perceive our role or our responsibility, and what we want out of our future as a teacher. So the way we believe we are viewed by others, of course, this is also very important here. So how we're viewed by our colleagues, by students themselves, and of course by the parents of the students as well. These are all interrelated and play a really big part in the development of our professional identity, who we are as a professional teacher. So teachers who are passionate about their teaching. So teachers who have very strong and defined pedagogical beliefs, they also they tend to have a very strong sense of professional identity, so who they are as a teacher. From my research, for my PhD about perceptions of teacher professional identity, my findings suggested that memberships in professional organisations were very significant in developing an identity, and also assisted in a lot of ways in terms of teacher retention, because it gives teachers and student teachers the opportunity to do things like being a voice and to raise the profile of the profession. Also to build an informed and supportive network. So this was for feedback, for collaborative activities, projects, any future research that you wanted to be involved in, or possibly research that your school may be involved in. It was also about being proactive in the development and also the review of policy, so within your school or even broader. Also advocating in matters of significance, and not just for the profession, but matters that have a significance for you. So something that's tied to your core beliefs as well. To liaise, collaborate, network with relevant national and international organisations. This was an important one. So particular networks and organisations that you can join. I'm a member of Early Childhood Australia, but there are many organisations. BETA, B-E-T-A, for example, Beginning and Establishing Teachers Association. It's a Queensland organisation, and they also have student membership as well. So I think it's about $15. And remembering that these memberships can all be claimed on your tax as well. So now is very much the time to start thinking about these memberships, about being involved in these associations. It's all about being proactive to get involved in the profession, but I guess in your profession as well. It all starts here, and as a student, this is a really good place to start. So finding those organisations that you want to join. So we all acknowledge that the teaching profession requires ongoing learning. So the Communities of Practice Framework by Wenger, Levin Wenger, it's a social learning theory that considers different groups of learners. So teachers, policymakers, employer authorities, teacher educators, you as pre-service teachers, and also the students as well. So Wenger advocates for best practice that involves membership in these communities of practice. So it involves feedback and evaluation of practice, and also learning from within and across these collaborative groups as well. So the Communities of Practice Framework, you probably already have looked at this in some of your other units, but if you haven't, I would advise doing some further reading as well. Okay, so the ability to interact within these communities, it's vital, and having appropriate interpersonal skills to be members of these communities, to interact, to be an agent. It's important that you have these interpersonal skills. So I'd like you to pause the recording here and to take a moment to reflect on the points on the slide. We're going to discuss this in depth in workshop 1 next week in week 11. So I'd like you to have a really good think about these points, jot some notes down in your journal, and be ready to break it down further in next week's workshop. So in your learning journal, pause and take a moment to reflect here. Okay, so Day and Gu, in their research, they suggest that for many teachers, their ongoing sense of inquiry is driven by a dynamic quality. And they refer to this as vocational commitment. So, a commitment to make a difference to the learning of the children. So, this enables them to maintain a sense of moral purpose in their teaching. So, they say that it involves the head, the hand, and the heart. So, I guess a question that we need to think about is something like, is teaching your future job, or is it your future vocation? So, are we thinking about teaching in terms of just a job or a vocation, a passion and a commitment that you will have in your future? Because whether it is a vocation or it's just a job, is going to make a big difference in how you feel about all of that extra work that you're going to have to do as a teacher, and if it's a chore or if it's actually something that you take on with enjoyment and with passion. Something you again might like to reflect on in your learning journal. So something that's linked directly to this as well, to this commitment, is about how you view and you value learning. So are you committed to and excited about the thought of ongoing inquiry in your professional practice? Or do you see it as a chore? Okay, I'm finishing uni and now I'm going to be a professional teacher. Or is it about the sharing of perspectives and understandings in this community of practice in an ongoing way? So, continued professional practice, ongoing learning. Again, I'd like you to pause and reflect in your journal. So, read the quote on the slide, think about how you feel about this statement. How integral is learning to you, both in life, I guess, and also in your professional development? Have a think about it before you move on. So unfortunately, we don't just suddenly become a teacher when we graduate. Your development, it needs to be seen as a continuum. So beginning in your case with your degree, now in your pre-service masters, and continuing throughout your career. This ongoing learning is recognised as essential work practice within the standards, so within the Australian professional standards. So the ongoing learning and professional development. Teacher learning is now regarded as essential work practice. Okay, I love this particular quote by Gundy and Robinson. Learning is central to the development of the profession and should be viewed as a badge of honour. And I believe this is rightly so. Ongoing learning, it takes commitment and it should be honoured. So as teachers, we need to make our teaching and this ongoing learning more visible. So teaching is an honourable vocation, and it's really important that we show this within our daily professional practice. We make and discuss our learning intentions visible. So visible to our colleagues, visible to parents, visible to the community. So again, it's about our vocation, our commitment to the profession, and wearing that badge of honour. So in our professional practice, we're always learning. On a daily basis, we make connections in our observation and our formative assessment of children's learning. Also in our evaluation of our own practice, in our feedback to and our feedback from our colleagues, and in our more formal teacher professional development based on our learning goals. So there are many different kinds of learning within our profession. So the last one, learning by becoming, it's essential, and a reason why we actually have an emphasis on mentoring our beginning teachers and encouraging this culture of feedback that we have discussed. So learning by becoming. So I'd like you to have a look at these 5 points on the slide. As we discussed prior to professional experience, to maximize your learning, you needed to evaluate your practice and to analyze your practice. You needed to analyze the context and the relationships within the actual context as well. How did you feel about yourself as a developing teacher during professional experience? It talks about self-esteem there in point 5. Did you allow yourself to make mistakes, to experiment, and to learn from these? Did you evaluate, and did you follow up with other experiences as suggested by your supervising teacher? I want you to reflect on these points in your journal in terms of maximizing your professional experience and possibly thinking, do I need to adapt what I'm doing in my next placement to better maximize this learning? Another quote there as well, who dares to teach must never cease to learn. Another one. So what I'd like you to do is to get your journals out again and pause the recording and reflect on these 5 points moving into your next professional practice. So we have a clip for you to watch here. I'd like you to click on the link, have a look at the clip, and to reflect on the teacher's experiences and how she learned during her professional experience. And again, relate this back to your own professional experience. And again, a message that you can take from watching this clip and reflecting, a message that you can take into your next professional experience. So again, pause and reflect. So looking specifically at what being a reflective practitioner is, because it's a critical part of becoming an effective teacher. So a reflective practitioner is someone who views teaching as intellectual, emotional, physical, and also socially responsible. Someone who is prepared to confront dilemmas, as it says on the slide, in their thinking, and to weigh up the ethical implications of their behaviour. So someone who is committed to teaching in ways that benefit all children. So reflective practitioner is the active and ongoing careful consideration of any belief or supposed form of knowledge. Also, a reflective practitioner is someone who is culturally sensitive, compassionate, and also morally responsible. So although we have a need for intellectually capable teachers, we also have a need for these culturally sensitive, passionate, and morally responsible teachers. So Zeichner 1989 stresses the importance of the reflective teachers being committed to both social justice and to an ethic of care. So teachers who are able to actively engage to provide an education that helps all children. So all children to have access to learning and to decent and rewarding lives. I'd like you to stop again and to reflect on what this means to you, what this means to you personally, and how you think you might enact this in your future practice. So in your learning environment, how can you be culturally sensitive, compassionate, and morally responsible in your practice? Okay, so what attitudes are important or necessary for reflection? So open-mindedness, of course, so an active desire to listen to more perspectives than just one, than just your own. Responsibility, so to ask, why am I doing what I'm doing in the learning environment, so at any given time. And wholeheartedness, an ability to take risks and to act. So to advocate for individual students or a group of students as a whole. Again, reflect on your attitudes to learning during professional experience and what you have learned that may assist you moving into your next placement in terms of your attitudes. So your open-mindedness, responsibility, and also wholeheartedness. So that ability to take risks and to act. So the Australian Professional Standards, during your placement, you use the standards to recognise developing capabilities. Their standards, they also inform the ongoing development of your professional learning goals. So as a student and also as a beginning teacher, this is going to be very important. So the goals, they provide a framework through which you can judge the success of your learning and also to assist your self-reflection and your self-assessment. So we're going to discuss this further in your next workshop in terms of developing an understanding of who you are as a professional teacher and guiding your development of your learning statement as well. We're going to go into quite a bit of depth about this in workshop 2. So in terms of developing your teaching statement or your philosophy, in the Sikorsky article, he talked about 3 levels of reflection. So the mirror, the microscope, and the binoculars. And we're actually going to have a look at these in turn. So starting with the mirror, of course. So this is your understanding about who you are, so your beliefs and your values, as we discussed earlier. So these, of course, they play a huge part in what your philosophy will look like, because it's all to do with not just being a professional, but yourself as well, who you are. So my personal values, they're very much based on equality and social justice issues. So I guess these have influenced my strong beliefs about differentiation, relationships, and collaboration. So if you haven't had the opportunity to reflect on these yet, you may want to have a good look in your mirror now that you've finished your professional practice and just think about those core beliefs and values that are going to influence your professional statement and your philosophy as a teacher. So the second one, the microscope, this represents looking at the experience that have shaped your beliefs and your understandings and your values. So how they've been shaped by your life experiences. Again, I guess reflecting on in terms of the microscope for me, I think a lot of my high school teachers, well, not a lot of them, some of them had a very significant impact. And I guess also my family to some extent, and my work and my study prior to education. These all work together to develop my understandings and my beliefs about practice, and especially in terms of early childhood practice as well. Again, you might like to reflect on these in your journal. So the third one, the final one, the binoculars, have a read of the slide. So this one is more focused on the context. So what is relevant to the specific school or the learning environment or the school culture in some ways. So this will significantly impact what and how you are going to teach. So there are several factors. There's your philosophy, your own personal understandings, your pedagogical beliefs, but also the context as well. Again, this is something that I'd like you to reflect on the context of your professional experience placement. In what ways did policy and the culture of the environment impact on how or what you and your supervising teacher taught? I'd also like you to reflect on the understanding how practice will be shaped by the physical, by the social and political influence as well in your future schools as well. So this is really going to have an impact on how you are going to be able to practice as a teacher, how you're actually going to be able to enact your personal philosophy, all of those different areas that work together to influence the context, how you're going to work with this in regards to enacting your personal philosophy. So another framework for reflecting, this one is presented by Taggart, 2005. So from the top, we're looking at the dialectical approach or the dialectical level. So again, we're looking at reflecting on morals, ethics, and that understanding of the self. So then the contextual level, what I was just talking about in the last slide, reflecting on alternative choices in your practice, so all of those contextual influences, making sure the content is relevant to this context and it's meaningful to the students. The third level, the technical level, this is about meeting the outcomes relating to theory and past experience, developing of skills and keeping up to date with current research. So this is about you as the teacher and the learner as well, referencing all of those past experiences and using those to move forward into how you're actually going to work within your context. So just an alternative look at another reflective thinking model. Again, very similar, but to the mirror, the microscope, but just another one. Okay, so this is the final reflection activity for you to complete. I'd like you to read the slide, and then there are some templates on the next two slides that I want you to go through. So I want you to think about key qualities, behaviours and approaches. So the two slides are here. I'd like you to have a really good think about each of these. You may want to write some dot points, you may want to write sentences, or you may want to draw some images that represent these particular areas. So this is really important because I'd like you to use this for our next workshop, workshop 2, where we're going to really look into more depth about starting to write our statement, our teaching statement, moving into our QTPA in your final professional experience. So there are two slides. I'd like you to go through each of them, and I'd like you to jot down some points in your journal ready for discussion or ready to think about it in workshop 2. Okay, so thinking about our personal teaching philosophy, this is what, as I said, we're going to be doing in workshop 2. This teaching philosophy, it's regarded as one of the most desirable attributes in pre-service teachers. So by the time you finish your masters, you're each going to have a very unique, fairly well developed teaching philosophy, which of course is going to be adapted throughout your teaching career, and it will be influenced and it will be impacted upon by various contexts and situations within your career. But this is going to be one of your last pieces of assessment that you're going to be completing in your final teaching placement. So I really want you to start thinking about this now, because it's something that you need to build upon. And I have stressed this before, but it's not something that you can suddenly do in your final placement. It takes a lot of reflection, and it will really change and adapt with each particular professional placement context that you come upon as well. So on the final slide, we've got some references that you may want to look at for some further reading or to assist you in some more reflection. But please make sure that if you haven't gone through each of these slides and completed the reflection, that you do so before going into workshop 2. Thank you very much. And again, please contact me if you have any questions. Thank you very much.